What if your mother wasn't just your parent, but your queen and your lover? As horrifying as it sounds, history tells us it happened. These aren't myths. These are real queens who crossed the unthinkable line with their own sons, just to hold on to power. Let's start with the woman behind Alexander the Great, Olympias. But before we talk about that woman, go ahead and give this video a like. Olympias wasn't just the mother of Alexander the Great. She was the architect behind his myth, the woman who whispered gods into his bloodline and vengeance into his soul. From the moment he was born, she told him he wasn't just a prince. He was the son of Zeus, and he believed her. She shaped his destiny not with swords, but with stories. And as he grew into a conqueror, she tightened her grip. Their bond, by all accounts, went beyond what was considered normal. Even in royal terms, courtiers whispered that she kept him too close, that she inserted herself into his romantic life, that she hated any woman who drew his attention. Some say she orchestrated the deaths of his lovers, others that she seduced power through his shadow. When Alexander died, she didn't grieve like a mother, she ruled like a queen. She declared herself guardian of his empire, protector of his child, and avenger of his blood. But by then, she wasn't just preserving his legacy, she was preserving her own. Olympias blurred the line between maternal pride and political possession, shaping one of history's greatest kings while quietly carving her name beneath his. Long before the world fixated on Cleopatra VII, another queen ruled Egypt with a story far more disturbing. Cleopatra II was born into the Ptolemaic dynasty, where incest wasn't taboo. It was tradition. She first married her brother, Ptolemy VI, and together they reigned as co-sovereigns, their union wrapped in the veil of divine legitimacy. But after his death, Cleopatra made a move that stunned even her contemporaries. She married her own son, not in secret, not as a rumor, but in full view of the court, the priests, and the gods. A mother queen, now a wife, a son, now bound to serve both as ruler and consort. The Egyptian priesthood documented the marriage in temple inscriptions, sanctifying what should have shattered. And at first, it worked. The Ptolemaic image was maintained, a strong divine dynasty held together by blood. But behind the walls of Alexandria, power was decaying. The union quickly turned toxic. Cleopatra and her son-husband descended into conflict, accusing each other of betrayal. Civil war erupted between mother and child, lover and queen. Cities burned. Families were slaughtered. The royal bloodline they sought to preserve became the very weapon they used to destroy each other. Cleopatra II, once the proud matriarch of Egypt, ended her reign as both ruler and ruin. In trying to keep power within the family, she collapsed the very dynasty she sought to protect. And in the silence that followed, history buried her beneath the fame of others, perhaps because her story was too dark, too unholy. Wu Zetian began as a concubine, just one among many in the emperor's court, easily overlooked. But she watched, learned, and waited. When the emperor died, she didn't fade into obscurity. She clawed her way back into the palace by seducing his successor, her late husband's own son. That relationship raised eyebrows, but it was only the beginning. Wu wasn't playing for affection, she was building an empire. As she moved from consort to empress, her grip on the throne deepened, and the men around her began to disappear. Ministers, rivals, lovers, none were safe if they stood between her and power. And when she finally placed her own sons on the throne, it wasn't to let them rule, it was to rule through them. Historical records from the Tang dynasty speak in riddles, whispers, and veiled accusations. One son became her puppet, and some claimed her lover. Whether fact or political smear, the rumors held weight, because Wu wielded her motherhood not as warmth, but as control. She elevated her bloodline, then crushed it when it defied her. One son was deposed, another was humiliated, still another died mysteriously. Through every betrayal, Wu emerged stronger. She became the only female emperor in China's history, not by kindness or inheritance, but by bending identity itself. Mother, lover, sovereign. She shattered every role to become something terrifyingly new, a woman who didn't just inherit power, she devoured it. Queen Teuta ruled not from a golden throne, but from the cliffs of Illyria, where ships bowed to her name and betrayal was punished with blood. She was a pirate queen in a man's world, bold, strategic, and utterly ruthless. But with power came paranoia. Her son, heir to the throne, was her most valuable ally and her greatest threat. Some ancient sources whisper that she bound him with more than titles. That loyalty in her court wasn't earned through affection, but domination. The rumors say she made him not just her successor, but her consort, a relationship blurred by secrecy, driven by obsession. Nothing was written plainly, no evidence confirmed, and yet the silence around it feels louder than denial. Historians debate whether the scandal was real or invented by Roman enemies to discredit her rule, but in a kingdom ruled by force and fear, Tota's methods were never conventional. She didn't just rule Illyria, she commanded it like a warship, keeping everyone close, especially the one who could take her place. Whether mother, queen, or something more, Tota's legacy is a ghost story carved into the Adriatic winds, too suspicious to dismiss and too buried to forget. Agrippina the Younger wasn't just the mother of an emperor, she was the architect of one. From the moment Nero was born, she saw him not as a child, but as her return to power. Her husband died under suspicious circumstances, her enemies disappeared, and through a carefully plotted marriage to Emperor Claudius, her own uncle, she positioned Nero as heir. But when Claudius died, suddenly and conveniently, the boy she had molded was crowned emperor at just 16. What followed was a reign haunted by her shadow. Ancient historians like Tacitus and Suetonius whisper that Agrippina's influence over Nero wasn't just maternal. They paint scenes of calculated affection, intimate grooming, and nights behind palace doors that blurred the lines between mother and consort. Whether those stories were fact or political poison, the fear they stirred was real. Agrippina stood behind the throne, but she also stood in its way. She dictated Nero's policies, she chose his advisors. She even appeared on coinage beside him, unheard of for a Roman woman. And as Nero aged, the tension thickened. He grew resentful, independent, dangerous. She didn't step aside, so he pushed her. First from the palace, then from power, and finally from life. The moment Agrippina died, stabbed by assassins Nero had sent, the empire changed. A boy king became a tyrant. A mother's ambition became her curse. And Rome learned that no bond, not even blood, can survive when power demands sacrifice. In each of these stories, the role of mother was not nurtured, it was weaponized. Love was not unconditional, it was transactional. These queens didn't merely lose themselves in power, they dissolved every boundary that defined them. Their sons became tools, tokens, and thrones. And the deeper they reached for control, the more they tore apart the very bond they once claimed to protect. Morality faded, bloodlines blurred, and motherhood, one of humanity's most sacred roles, was rewritten as strategy. But these weren't monsters. They were survivors in palaces where mercy meant death, and loyalty was as fragile as breath. They made choices, impossible and devastating, in worlds where power wasn't handed to women. It had to be seized, however grotesquely. So the question isn't just how far they went, but how far any of us might go if power was absolute and the cost of losing it was everything. Would you have done any differently? Is this really just history? Or have the names just changed? Today's dynasties wear suits instead of crowns. Royal families, political empires, billionaire bloodlines. The incest may be gone, but the obsession remains. Power still clings to blood. Successors are still hand-picked, groomed, and kept in the family. The boardrooms and ballots may look cleaner, but behind them are the same fears: betrayal, disloyalty, dilution. We like to believe we've moved on, but the instincts never left. These stories weren't just about queens. They were about us, about what happens when legacy matters more than love, and when loyalty comes not from trust, but from control.